From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We knew about the hotel. We knew that it was a hotel where journalists were located and others, and it is for that reason it was not attacked during any phase of the aerial campaign.
Secretary of State Colin Powell in 2003. He was talking about the Palestine Hotel in Baghdad. U.S. troops shelled the hotel, killing journalists Jose Coso and Taras Pratyuk. The Pentagon has maintained the killings were accidental. We'll speak with a former Army sergeant who worked in military intelligence. She says she saw a list of targets that included the Palestine Hotel. Then a conversation with legendary writer Gore Vidal.
I didn't think that institutionally we were so easy to overthrow, because it was a coup d'etat, 9/11. The whole went crashing. And when they got rid of Magna Carta, I thought, well, really, this wasn't much of a republic to begin with.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Over 12,000 people have died in China following the country's worst earthquake in 3 decades. Officials fear the death toll will still dramatically increase. The massive earthquake in Sichuan province flattened schools, shops, and homes across the region. At least 2 large schools collapsed, killing or trapping over 1,900 students. In the town of Hangguang, several thousand people were killed or buried when a major factory collapsed. Up to 6,000 workers were inside the factory at the time of the earthquake, which measured 7.8 on the Richter scale. China has sent tens of thousands of troops into the region to help with the rescue effort. The earthquake comes just months before the opening of the Olympic Games in Beijing. One survivor said almost all the buildings in her neighborhood had collapsed.
I was living on the 2nd floor. The building did not collapse, but a lot of things fell over and hit me. And later, almost all the buildings near us collapsed.
The earthquake was China's deadliest since 1976, when 240,000 people were killed in the city of Tangshan near Beijing. In campaign news, Senator Hillary Clinton is expected to easily win today's primary in West Virginia. Senator Barack Obama all but conceded the state to Clinton weeks ago and has turned his focus to November battleground states. Today, Obama is scheduled to campaign in Missouri and Michigan. On the Republican front, Senator John McCain campaigned in Portland, Oregon Monday and outlined his plan to address global warming. McCain broke with the Bush administration and called for reducing greenhouse gases by 60% by mid-century and for a cap-and-trade system that would allow companies to buy or trade emissions credits. Many groups have criticized McCain's environmental record. The League of Conservation Voters has given McCain a lifetime grade of 24% on what it considers crucial environmental votes. In other election news, former Republican Congressman Bob Barr has officially announced plans to run for the Libertarian Party's presidential nomination. Federal immigrant agents raided the world's largest kosher meatpacking plant today and arrested as many as 700 workers. It was the largest immigration raid ever in Iowa. The raid at Agri-Processors, Inc. was carried out by 16 local, state, and federal agencies led by ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE said they entered the Iowa plant to execute a criminal search warrant for evidence relating to aggravated identity theft, fraudulent use of Social Security numbers, and other crimes. Meanwhile, the Washington Post has published a major investigative series on the substandard health care offered in immigration detention centers in the United States. According to the Post, 83 prisoners have died in or soon after custody during the past 5 years. According to an analysis by the Post, most of the people who died were young. 32 of the prisoners were younger than 40, only 6 were 70 or older. President Bush is vowing to help arm Lebanon's army so it can fight Hezbollah. In an interview with the BBC on the eve of his trip to the Middle East, Bush said the U.S. must support the Lebanese government in the ongoing sectarian violence.
My government's position is to support the Sonora government, is to beef up his army so that he can have a chance to respond to people who are acting outside the confines of government. And, you know, Hezbollah would be nothing without Iranian support. And Iranian is the crux of many of the problems in the Middle East, whether it be funding of Hezbollah, funding of Hamas, or obviously actions within the young democracy of Iraq. And so a lot of my trip is going to be to get people to focus not only in Lebanon, remember Lebanon, but also to remember that Iran causes a lot of the problems.
President Bush arrives in Israel Wednesday for 60th anniversary celebrations. Then he will visit Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Bush also repeated his criticism of Iran over its alleged role in arming Shia militias in Iraq.
They know that the Iraqi government, along with the U.S. government, wants them to stop sending their weapons from Iran into Iraq, all aiming to kill innocent people. That's what they're doing. They're being very, you know, they're not being constructive at all. But they absolutely know our position. And when we catch them doing it, they'll be brought to justice. And we are catching them doing it right now.
While Bush accused Iran of sending arms to Iraq, new questions have been raised over the claims. The Los Angeles Times reports the U.S. military scheduled a news conference last week in Iraq to show journalists alleged Iranian-supplied explosives that were found in the Iraqi city of Karbala. The military had to cancel the presentation when it realized that none of the weapons were from Iran. A U.S. military spokesperson blamed the confusion on an Iraqi army general in Karbala who erroneously reported the items were of Iranian origin. Meanwhile, Iran's accusing the United States of meddling in Iranian affairs. On Monday, the Iranian judiciary announced it would file international lawsuits against the United States and Britain, accusing them of providing financial support to a group that bombed a mosque in the Iranian city of Shiraz, killing 14 people. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is pressing the military junta in Burma to immediately accept more international assistance to help survivors of last week's cyclone.
We are at a critical point. Unless more aid gets into the country very quickly, we face an outbreak of infectious diseases that could dwarf today's crisis. I therefore call in the most strenuous terms on the government of Myanmar to put its people's lives first. It must do all that it can to prevent this disaster from becoming even more serious.
Authorities in Burma have raised the cyclone death toll to nearly 32,000, but aid groups said the final death toll will be much higher. British Prime Minister Gordon Brown criticized the military junta's response to the cyclone.
We now estimate that 2 million people faced famine or disease as a result of the lack of cooperation of the Burmese authorities. This is completely unacceptable. There must be unfettered access to humanitarian agencies. We've already made available £5 million. We've got a humanitarian team now in Rangoon to assess all options for getting help through to people in need.